Hello everybody, this afternoon your challenge is a history challenge and it's to find out about two very famous inventors called the Wright brothers. I'd like you to have a look through this PowerPoint presentation to find some facts about them, and afterwards you're going to use the facts to create a fact file about these two very famous brothers. So Orville and Wilbur Wright invented the aeroplane. This was a huge milestone in the world of international transportation. Today, people can take trips that previously would have taken months by train or boat, and now only take a few hours by plane. So let's have a look at this timeline. So the very first flight of a hot air balloon took place in 1783. Here we go. Wilbur Wright wasn't born until 1867, and his younger brother Orville was born in 1871. They made their first flight of an aeroplane in 1903. The brothers grew up in America. As children, they enjoyed coming up with new inventions. Their first interest in flight began when their father bought them a toy helicopter, which flew with the help of rubber bands. Perhaps you could have a try of making a helicopter with some rubber bands. As they grew older, they learned how to make efficient propellers. That's the part of the engine that turns on the outside of the plane, and studied how birds flew to aid their wing design. So they looked at how birds used their wings to fly, and that helped them think of good ways of making wings for their aeroplanes. They also learned how to make lightweight engines. They needed to make the engines much lighter so the planes could take off, because previously engines were made of very heavy metals, and so it would be very difficult for the plane to take off and to stay in the air without being pulled down by the weight of the engine. So they need to make them much, much lighter to go in an aeroplane. Orville made the first flight in North Carolina in December 1903. He flew 120 feet and it lasted only 12 seconds. As the day went on, both brothers had flights which lasted for increasingly longer periods of time. So they started off with only a flight of 12 seconds, but they kept trying, they kept persevering and trying again and again until the flights got a little bit longer and a little bit longer. Have a look at this picture of their first aeroplane. How do you think it looks different to aeroplanes that we see today? In November 1904, so nearly a year later, using a newly designed craft named Flyer 2, Wilbur took to the sky. This flight lasted for over 5 minutes. Can you notice what's changed about this aeroplane from his previous attempt? Have a little look. So here's a timeline of the history of flight. Okay, so as we said earlier, the first flight of a hot air balloon took place in 1783. The first flight of an aeroplane we just learned about took place in 1903. In 1939 was the first flight of a helicopter. In 1957 was the first airliner carrying passengers. So this was the first time people used an aeroplane to travel somewhere. And the first flight into space was in 1961. I want you to have a big think about how the invention of aeroplanes has changed the way people live. Okay, when you've finished, you can have another look through this PowerPoint, and when you've finished, you can use the internet to see if you can do a little bit more research about the Wright brothers, and then use all of the information that you collect to do the fact file. There's a sheet in the paper learning pack, and the same one has been uploaded onto the website. I look forward to seeing it later. Thank you, everybody.